I broke up with my boyfriend after he proposed to me in front of my entire family, even though I had told him multiple times I wasn't ready to get married. Now, not only is my ex hurt, but my whole family blames me for the public rejection. My boyfriend Lucas, 32 male, and I, 23 female, been together for 3 years now. We first connected on Bumble, and even after just a couple dates, it was obvious we had stumbled onto something pretty special. Despite the considerable age gap between us, our relationship felt natural and easy, and we bonded instantly over our passion for travel and adventure. From day one, I made sure Lucas knew exactly where I stood about long-term commitments. I wasn't in any rush to settle down and get married. I loved the adventures we shared and the sense of freedom that came with it. Marriage just wasn't on my radar yet. Lucas always nodded in agreement, reassuring me that our relationship was his priority and that he could wait as long as I needed. About 3 months ago, we went to the wedding of one of his close friends. That was the first time I met a bunch of his old college buddies. During the reception, a couple of them started ribbing us about when we were going to tie the knot. I laughed it off, feeling a bit nervous but didn't think much more of it. But after we got home, Lucas's behavior changed. Suddenly, he was constantly sending me Instagram posts and TikToks that praised women who married and had kids before turning 30. At first, I shrugged it off as just a quirky phase, but things kept escalating. He'd ask his sister if we could watch her kids on weekends, my precious downtime after a demanding work week. I didn't mind babysitting now and then, but Lucas gradually made it a regular event without even checking with me. There were times I had lined up dinner reservations or made other plans for us, and he'd cancel them at the last minute, saying we had to babysit because his sister needed a break. At first, I thought maybe he was just being helpful, but then it dawned on me, maybe he was deliberately trying to train me for the future he had planned. And honestly, it bugged me even more that every time we babysat, he'd just plop on the sofa with the kids and watch cartoons or sports, leaving the bulk of the actual childcare to me. Weekends stopped being for relaxation. They became about being an unpaid babysitter. After a while, I decided enough was enough. I started making separate plans with friends on the weekends. Lucas wasn't happy about this at all. He said, "You're a woman, it's your job to look after the kids," and suggested I should be the one taking the lead. I snapped back, reminding him that he was the one always volunteering me without asking, so the responsibility was his, not mine. Things got tense. He threw out, "Is this how you're going to treat our own kids someday?" That disgusted me, and I let him know those were his sister's kids, not mine, and that I refused to be forced into any fake domestic routine while all he did was crack open beers and laze around. Right there, I reminded him of my boundaries. I wasn't ready for marriage or even thinking about having children for at least another 4 years. Lucas apologized a few days later, promising he understood, and for a while, things improved. But then, during a lovely date at a restaurant, Lucas suddenly started staring at a family dining at the next table. Then, out of nowhere, he launched into this speech about how my biological clock was ticking, and we should try to have children soon. That conversation shook me. I realized he was taking things seriously, almost obsessively, despite everything I'd told him. Finally, after a particularly tense evening at home, I'd made an elaborate dinner for the two of us. I decided to just talk it out openly. As we were eating, I admitted point blank that I wasn't ready for marriage. I explained how I valued our relationship, but needed time to grow as an individual before making such a huge commitment. I made it clear that I wasn't looking to marry for at least 4 years. Lucas tried hard to win me over, painting pictures of happy marriages and thriving families, arguing that marriage could bring us happiness and stability. But his arguments didn't reflect what I wanted, and I stood my ground. The more we talked, the more I realized we were going in circles. So I told him, if my unwillingness to get married was a deal breaker, maybe we needed to break up. He panicked, backtracking fast. He insisted he loved me for who I was and just needed some time to readjust his own thinking. He promised to respect my feelings and not bring up marriage again. I didn't fully believe him, but I wanted to trust him. For a few blissful weeks, that promise seemed to hold. He stopped talking about marriage, and we got our groove back. More adventures, weekend hikes, city exploring, all that. Life felt pretty great. A few weeks later, my sister Nora's birthday was coming up. I was stoked to see my family after ages. In the days leading up to the visit, Lucas spent more and more time on his phone. Every time I entered the room, he'd act a little suspicious. I brushed it off but felt a little anxious. As soon as we arrived at my hometown, Lucas seemed extra invested in every detail of Nora's birthday celebration. He kept checking his phone and sneaking out for mysterious calls. Still, I let myself get swept up in the fun, catching up with family. Eating good food, just soaking in the party vibe. Then came the big moment. Just as we were all laughing and chatting, Lucas clinked his glass so everyone would pay attention. The room went quiet. I suddenly felt all eyes were on me, and a knot twisted in my stomach. Lucas started in on a speech about how meeting me had completely changed his life, about how he never thought he'd find someone to settle down with, and that he'd never been happier. Before I could process what was going on, he was standing in front of me on one knee, holding out a ring. My whole family and all my friends started to cheer and shout encouragements. People were snapping pictures and filming. My mom's eyes were shining with happy tears, and Nora was mouthing, "Say yes," but I was frozen with shock and dread. Lucas knew exactly how I felt about marriage. He also knew I hated big public displays, but there he was, cornering me under the gaze of everyone I cared about, practically daring me to say no. For one horrible moment, I hesitated. All those eyes, my mother looking thrilled, my sister signaling for me to accept, cousins giggling, friends crowded around, Lucas grinning like a kid at Christmas. But as the pressure mounted, all I could think was, he's doing this to win, not for me. My voice barely above a whisper, I said, "I can't." The words seemed to echo in the quiet. Lucas's face fell, his smile vanishing. An awkward hush swept the room as people realized what was happening. Lucas forced a strained smile and stood up, but the party felt ruined. Part of me wanted to disappear, another part wanted to scream at Lucas. Instead, I walked him inside, away from the backyard crowd. Once the door was closed, I let loose. I told him how angry and betrayed I felt, that he would try to ambush me into saying yes, after all our conversations. Lucas started to cry, saying I'd shattered his dreams and that any other woman would be thrilled to accept. I shot back that maybe he should propose to someone else instead. The argument escalated. Lucas accused me of leading him on all these years. I reminded him, again, that I had never agreed to any of this. My mom and Nora, alarmed by the fight, rushed in and tried to convince me to change my mind, insisting that I needed to grow up and get married. It hurt to see my own family taking his side. Nora chided me for embarrassing Lucas and ruining her birthday party. I looked around, my friends casting me sympathetic glances, but I just felt more isolated. Overwhelmed and unable to handle the pressure, I walked out, leaving Lucas and my family behind. Since then, Lucas, hurt and embarrassed, flew home alone. I stayed at my parents' a few days longer, but things were awkward. My family couldn't understand my decision, and the guilt was crushing. Was I really the villain here for sticking to my boundaries? Edit. Update 1. After I posted this, things got more intense at home. Nora and I ended up having a huge argument. She confessed that Lucas had told her weeks ago about his proposal plan. She thought it would be a beautiful, unforgettable birthday surprise and felt I ruined what was supposed to be a happy day for everyone. My mom tried to keep the peace, but the blame game just escalated between me and Nora. Finally, I broke down and explained to them both that Lucas and I had repeatedly discussed my lack of interest in marriage, and that he'd assured me the pressure was off. Nora's anger faded into confusion. She had no idea Lucas already knew my feelings. She asked why he would propose if he knew my answer wouldn't be yes. I said maybe he thought a dramatic, public gesture could override my earlier rejections. At that, my dad, Mark, 57 years old, who doesn't usually wade into family arguments, spoke up. I braced for more criticism, but instead, he told Nora to back off. If Lucas really cared about her, he wouldn't try to corner her in public. Love should grow on its own, not be forced with big scenes and drama. That got Nora thinking. For once, someone was on my side, yet even with my dad's support, tension hung in the air. Meanwhile, Lucas kept texting and calling, saying he missed me and couldn't imagine life without me. Honestly, I started to feel suffocated. I did love Lucas, but his refusal to accept my boundaries made me question the entire relationship. I decided I'd confront him after I went back to the city. Update 2. First, thank you for the support and advice. When I got back to the city, I didn't go home right away. I knew Lucas would be waiting at our apartment, probably hoping to patch things over. I stayed at a hotel instead, wanting some space. He kept trying to reach me. At first, I felt guilty, but after 2 weeks, I knew I had to face things head on. I met Lucas for lunch in a quiet spot. He was eager to see me, But as soon as we sat down, the truth spilled out. I explained how much his public proposal had hurt, a betrayal of all the boundaries I'd set. I told him how the whole thing embarrassed me and it caused a rift with my family. Lucas tried to insist we should just move on, saying no one would remember the proposal if I simply agreed to marry him. I told him I couldn't. I couldn't forgive being backed into a corner. I said I didn't want to marry someone who would use public pressure to get his way. He pleaded, saying he loved me and wanted a family with me, but I'd already made my decision. He started to get frustrated, calling me things like a gold digger, accusing me of stringing him along. He complained that all his friends were settling down and that I was foolish to throw away the best thing that had ever happened to me. At that point, I laughed. It was just so ironic how he framed himself as my savior, when the reality was I'd been happier away from the drama. I told him I'd felt guilty before, but seeing him react this way made me even more certain I'd made the right choice. I wished him well, told him not to contact me again, and said I'd swing by to pick up my stuff and officially move out. He didn't argue. He was upset, but accepted it was over. Honestly, as our paths split, I felt a sense of relief. I was proud of myself for standing firm, even if it meant hurting him. Update 3. It's been about 4 months since the breakup. At first, the adjustment was rough. I moved in with a roommate, and it was weird not being in my old apartment. But little by little, independence began to feel amazing. I dropped a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying the whole time I was with Lucas. My family took a while to process everything. Nora especially found it hard to accept I'd left Lucas behind. Hoping to repair things, I invited her to my new place. We finally had a heart-to-heart, hashing out everything that happened. How the expectations from Lucas, and even the family, kept building until his showy proposal was just too much to bear. Nora was still worried about me, but as I explained how freeing it felt to live life on my terms, she began to get it. I was honest with her about my low points too. How breaking things off, facing family questions, and adjusting to life after a long-term relationship all hurt. But I also reminded her that it wasn't about rejecting a good thing. It was about finding out what I truly wanted. We even managed to laugh about how awkward that proposal had been. By the end of her visit, Nora told me she just wanted me to be happy, and we left things on good terms. Not long after, my mom also came to visit. Gradually, she realized I seemed lighter, happier. She apologized for pressuring me at the party and promised to respect my autonomy and support whatever choices I made in the future. That meant more to me than I can say. With the drama gone, my weekends became mine again. I rediscovered hobbies, traveled when the urge struck, and just enjoyed living for myself. I know life won't always be perfect, but these last few months taught me I don't need to conform to anyone else's vision for my life. Looking back, breaking up with Lucas, once something I agonized over, was actually the point where I began to really know myself. I'm moving ahead, writing my own story, and that simple fact fills me with confidence I never used to have. That wraps up the whole story. This story highlights how important it is to communicate your boundaries clearly and stick to them, even when it disappoints others. Public proposals may look romantic, but they can become coercive if they ignore a partner's feelings and needs. Here is a question for you. What would you do if someone you loved put you on the spot with a big public gesture you'd already said you didn't want? Do you think OP made the right choice in the end? Share your thoughts below.